So we're here at the Smart Energy International booth, and standing here with me is Kevin O'Donovan, Technology Evangelist for a bit of it and a bit of that. And welcome to the studio, Kevin. It's lovely to see you again.
Thank you very much.
In China, Shanghai, China Utility Week. You chaired a session this morning, and I'd love to get some of your key takeaways from the event.
It's been fascinating to be back here in China. We often look at what's going on in China with the state grid, southern China grid, all the different manufacturers here in China, and we kind of go, oh, look at all the stuff they're doing. And then you come here and you hear them present about what they are doing, and they going, well, we need to be more like Europe and more like what they do in the US because they're way ahead of us and all this and that. And it is fascinating to kind of just get the different perspective. Where I come from, we kind of say, you know, the faraway hills are green. But it's just fascinating to see the different, what would you say, the different people from the different regions swapping stories and going, okay, and it's just, until you come here, you know, you don't know what you don't know. It's fascinating.
Excellent. And so what were some of those key highlights from the presentation that you've seen even over the last 2 days, sort of the key observations that you've had? So
looking around the exhibition hall, going to the various sessions, some of the hubs, you know, it's probably simple to say, but okay, the laws of physics don't change in China or whatever, so electrons do what electrons do. So many of the problems are the same. Many of the business problems are the same. Trying to liberalize a market, bringing more renewables on, trying to get rid of some of the fossil fuels, etc., etc. The internet technologies, the most of the technologies they're using are the same. But I suppose a couple of things that I picked up on. We're still looking at cloud adoption in the US and in Europe as people kind of starting to use cloud more and more. Here, everything is cloud. It's just not a question. It all goes to the cloud. Second thing on top of that was hearing more about what State Grid in China are doing with their ubiquitous electricity IoT platform. So they're basically building out an entire platform to store all the data, do all of their AI, their AR, their you name it, for their entire grid. Because they're looking at the local internet giants here, Tencent, Baidu, and whatever, the same way that the utilities in Western Europe and in US are looking at the likes of Google and whatever, oh God, they're going to do all the stuff and they'll take over my business and whatever. So the same dynamics are going on at a different scale, but the same dynamics. And yet they're all working together, so that was quite fascinating. Another one was a bunch of companies here showing off robots. And when I was chatting with them, and they were saying, well, this is a robot that we'd have in a substation, and it'll go around and on a preset route, and you have cameras and infrared and all the cool stuff. And then if there's an issue, a guy in the control center can take over the robot and guide it somewhere to look at a particular thing. And I was like, okay, why? Well, the cost of workers here is getting very expensive, which up to a couple of years ago, you just didn't associate with China, right? Because it was cheaper than Western Europe. So in many parts of China now, A, it's hard to get people, B, it's expensive, so they're replacing workers with remote robots. So again, it's like, okay, interesting. And the last one, I suppose, was it was a presentation yesterday from one of the professors, and they were talking about the water nexus. But they had some excellent research on, well, we use a lot of water in the energy industry. So okay, you've got fossil fuel plants, they need water to generate steam, so they use water. You need water for today's technology for creating hydrogen, because it's liquid based. Until we get the membrane stuff, we still need a lot of water. There was a lot of stuff on carbon capture using water. There was a lot of stuff on biomass, so we use biomass instead of coal, but again, you need water. And then they were mapping out the areas in China that have lots of water and areas that don't have water, and trying to overlay how they hit all of their goals for reducing coal, bringing up renewables, bringing in hydrogen, and then mapping that onto, well, where have we got water? So that was fascinating. It's an extra layer of complexity, but it's not something I had particularly thought of when you say, well, the energy transition, but they were already factoring in, but we need lots of water. How does that play in?
Excellent. And I've had a number of conversations around blockchain as well. And some of the challenges they have in the local market is obviously regulatory issues and policy issues. Did you find any insights around the blockchain?
To be honest, the impression I got is that it's very much the same as what's happening in Europe and in the rest of the world. There are regulatory issues here. So even today in China, you can't have a peer-to-peer, I can't sell my electrons to you, right? So even though the market has become more liberal and there's more energy retailers, I just can't do peer-to-peer selling electrons to you. So blockchain has a technology that can fix that problem. There were a couple of examples of companies looking at it for trading, for energy RECs, very similar to what's happening in the rest of the world. But obviously there's a lot of legislation here as well coming in now where they're starting to crack down on the mining, the energy of the mining costs. So they're looking at things of proof of stake, proof of authority, instead of the proof of work consensus thing, which is where all the compute has to happen, which generates or needs all the energy. So same problems, same issues. People still see it as a tool that will help the entire energy transition, and it's something that we will use, but it's not that every utility in China is blockchain end to end. That doesn't exist yet. So a lot of actually a lot of the Chinese presenters were using the examples from the usual LO3, Grid Singularity, Power Ledger, Electron, as their examples of what we should do in China. Look at what they're doing in the rest of the world. Same problems, same opportunities.
Interesting take. And I suppose as a technology evangelist, do you see this market ever moving to a decentralized market in the energy sector?
They have a lot of policies, so if you look at their 5-year plan or the next one and the whole made in China and whatever, they are looking for more what we would call prosumers. But there is a lot of market reform because you have very integrated utilities here, right? State Grid does end-to-end, Southern China Grid, etc. But electric vehicles, I think electric vehicles are the thing that's going to be very different here than the rest of where we come from, simply because of the volume of electric vehicles. The Shanghai Auto Show started today, it's on downtown. There's going to be a couple of hundred new electric vehicles, buses, trucks, you name it, launched there. Every auto manufacturer in China has to have, I don't know, is it 10 or 20% of their production as electric vehicles in 5 or 10 years. So that's forcing an entire change in the energy system here, more so than I would say the prosumer thing, but it's kind of two sides of the same coin.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much for your insights at China Utility Week of all places. Lovely to have you again, and we look forward to seeing you at the next show.